episode of Jason Talks About. And in this episode, Jason talks about AEW Revolution pay-per-view that aired on March 9th, 2025. I'm your host, Jason Medeiros. That music you heard at the top, Reality 508. Find them where you find music. And find me on social media at Jason Talks About in most places. And please hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. And I appreciate each and every one of you. I've said it before, I'm still growing the page. And every follower means a lot to me. So I appreciate you guys. All right, let's talk Revolution. I'm not going to talk about the pre-show. I don't think a lot of people, well, I know I don't care too much about it. The only thing I will say about it is that they've been in California the last week or so, and they've been featuring Hobbs on Collision and Dynamite, and he's been getting some wins because he's from California. I apologize, I don't remember exactly where in California, but I know he's from California, and he's been very over. And the way they decided to use him at the pay-per-view was he did a run-in the pre-show to save the Big Boom AJ guy and Orange Cassidy and Mark Briscoe, and just posed with all of them after the match doing the boom thing. I was like, you guys do pay-per-views that are 4 hours long, 5 or 5.5 with the pre-show, and you couldn't figure out putting Hobbs, who's from California and who's been over in the last couple of weeks and been actually getting wins. You couldn't figure out getting him a match against someone and just getting a win in front of that crowd. That to me is very weird. But that's all I'll say about the pre-show. They opened up hot. They opened up with MJF versus Hangman Adam Page. I really liked this match. I thought this was one of the best two matches on the card. I'm surprised it opened the show, but I noticed that they do that with MJF a lot. If he's not the main event, a lot of times he opens the show. The crowd was wicked hot for this. There was a lot of AEW chants and all this stuff. But in the end, it was Hangman Page that prevailed with the buckshot lariat. But this was a very, very good match. And actually before that, he did hit the Angel's Wings, a tribute to Christopher Daniels. I was really impressed with the match. It was one of the matches I was looking most forward to. It was really solid. And a lot of people might find me saying this funny, but I think that was the right result. The loss doesn't hurt MJF. He barely loses ever. And Hangman right now, the badass, what started off as the new heel persona, has really caught on with the AEW fans. They're really into Hangman. He's one of their originals. They seem to love him again. And I think this was good. I think keeping Hangman's momentum was really good here. And, they can go back to this. It's a grudge-type rivalry. It's only been one match. So, they could definitely go back to this well. They could probably at least have a trilogy. But these two guys really complemented each other well in the ring. I apologize for not going blow for blow. It was a long 4 hours plus the pre-show, but I'm just giving my thoughts on everything. I mean, this is Jason Talks About things, giving my opinion on things. It's not meant for me to give a blow-by-blow analysis. I will do that sometimes if a match warrants it, or if maybe I do some kind of, nostalgia, like go back and review an old match or something, I may do that. But for the sake of this exercise, and not to make this an extremely long podcast for people to listen to, I'm just going to mention the main points. They had the TBS Championship match, CEO Mercedes Moné, the champion, versus Momo Watanabe. And I think I've made my feelings clear on this. Well, let me just say Billy Starks was watching the match, taking notes up in the suite or whatever, but I'm not saying there was a lot wrong with this match. But again, this is a problem with AEW. You can't assume everybody watches everything. And I don't know Momo. She wrestled once on Collision. They alluded to some past in Japan or whatever where they've had a match. I'm not into her. I don't care about her. There's no offense against the person. I've talked about at length where I think AEW has such potential in that women's division with the proper booking, and they actually do have a good, probably 8 to 10 really good, solid women that look good and look professional and can work in the ring and they just need to do something with him. And the fact that you flew over this woman from Japan, which a lot of the audience is going to have no idea anything about her. I don't. And that was who Mercedes fought, to me, is a shame, because you could have built a feud with one of your existing people. But anyway, they had an okay match. I keep saying that I wish that Mercedes would stop doing that Monet Maker, because it just is awkward, and unless it's executed 100% perfectly, it doesn't look good to me. But then she did roll into the bank statement and made her tap out, so that was good. So anyway, that was the Mercedes match. So, okay match. I'm not saying it was a bad match. I'm just not invested in it, and I just thought it was all right. Then they had the number one contenders match, Swerve versus Ricochet, and Ricochet has the robe. I thought these guys had a solid match. It was a solid back and forth. I think the Ricochet heel character is becoming a little better than it was originally, when he was kind of like looking like getting bitched out by the Hurt Syndicate and MVP and stuff. I think this is a little bit better. He feels a little more dangerous. And in the ring, he's a good worker. I just think that the character's a little, just not there yet. And they need to stop doing cringe stuff like pulling scissors on each other. And, let's just stop all that stuff. There's just too much of that going on in AEW. There was some intrigue in the match. Swerve bumped Nana accidentally, and Nana got pissed off and walked off and was giving fingers to Swerve, and they really had me going there. I was like, oh, wow. And then they went back and forth, and when there was a point where Nana came back out, and he grabbed the robe, but then Ricochet ended up getting his hands on him, and Nana got bumped again. And I got to tell you, I was keeping my eye on Nana, because I was like, this is kind of suspicious. Is he going to screw Swerve here? But nope, he didn't. The match went on, and Swerve ended up finishing off Ricochet with big pressure, he calls it. And he's the top contender for the AEW World Championship. And after the match, Swerve was able to grab the robe and give it back to Nana, and they hugged, and everything was good in Swerve land. So they almost swerved us with Nana, and everything ended up okay. So I thought that was a solid match, wrestling-wise. I thought that was a good match between those two guys. Then we had the AEW Continental Championship match, the Rainmaker Kazuchika Okada, the champion, versus Brody King from the Hounds of Hell. This match was okay. I don't know, I'm going to keep saying this. I watched Okada in New Japan. I used to watch it on Access TV, so I was, maybe a couple months behind or whatever, but I watched it pretty religiously. Okada does not look as good since coming to America in AEW. His body doesn't look as good, and his matches don't look as good. These guys had an okay match. I'm a big Brody King fan. I knew he was going to lose here, and to me it looked kind of odd with him just losing to that Rainmaker short arm clothesline, a big dude, a big guy like that. I thought they would come up with another finish. I'll give AEW this. They're consistent with the Okada push. Nobody kicks out of that Rainmaker. I could be mistaken. I think maybe Buddy did in Australia once, but then he ultimately got pinned by it. And but I could be wrong there. And I don't know. I just kind of feel for, like, again, Brody King's a big, massive dude, big guy with a lot of talent. I wish you'd do more with him. But Okada wins. Okay match. Don't have a lot else to say about that. So the Hurt Syndicate, the AEW World Tag Team Champions, defended their belts against the Outrunners, who are like super over and funny, and I love the whole 80s vibe and everything. It was a decent match. The Outrunners did get in some offense. I feel like things got a little lost in between. I don't know whose fault it was between Turbo Floyd and Shelton Benjamin, and there was like this awkward section in the middle of the match where they seemed to be a little lost. So I'm not gonna give it, top rank because of that. But it was a decent, good match. It wasn't very long. The Outrunners did get offense in, but inevitably the Hurt Syndicate just dominated at the end. It was, Shelton hitting the super kicks and Lashley hitting the spears on both guys, and it was over. They just, and they're presenting them as a juggernaut, and they should. The only shame here is I thought they were going to prep Buddy and Brody. I thought that would have been great to fight these two. Buddy's hurt now. They've been teasing the Murder Machines, but they're the ones who lost to the Outrunners. So maybe they'll climb their way back up. I don't know. But right now it looks like no one's even close to stopping them. And I got to think eventually Lashley's going to peel off and go for singles gold, but this was probably just a way to keep, them important and relevant and with gold around their waist in the meantime while they play out all this Moxley stuff, which I'll talk about later. They showed Lio Rush and Action Andretti watching in the crowd, and I'm saying to myself, if they just mow down the Outrunners, what the hell are they going to do to those two little guys? Like, this is going to be a joke. All right, so then we had the AEW World Championship match, the Hollywood ending street fight match with Timeless Toni Storm, the champion against Mariah May. Jim Ross joined the broadcast booth, so I was happy to see that. I'm not going to cover this again blow for blow. I've already said it. I'm not a huge fan of these street fights. I think the shame of this match is that these two women are really good wrestlers and could have just had a real great wrestling match. I get it. It's a grudge match. They hate each other. They wanted to blow it off in a special match. Fine. The problem is it's just too much, like AEW does a lot, and I'm going to get to it later in the review. All I'm going to say about this match is I thought way too much blood. I don't know if Toni Storm bladed herself too harshly by accident or whatever, but I was actually uncomfortable with the amount of blood Toni Storm was losing. She was literally covered in blood at points this match. I mean, literally. Her face, her neck, her chest, her arms. I mean, it was everywhere. And then Mariah May got busted open, and it was just blood on top of blood and blood everywhere. And after a while, you just become numb, and you're just like, whatever. I just want this match to end because I just feel like uncomfortable, and I just feel like these women are going to pass out, especially Toni Storm. She was gushing, and I don't know. I thought it was too much. And I don't know. I just don't think they need to do this, these women. They're really good without this. The crowd liked it. There was this is awesome chants here and there and whatever, but it's not my cup of tea. Toni Storm won. She did a code zero through a table on the rampway in the entrance area and covered Mariah May for the pin. I guess that's the right ending. I mean, you're not going to take the belt right off of Timeless Toni Storm already. But I hope that I just wish that somebody would get to the AEW booking committee and say, look, we're doing a pay-per-view. If we're going to have blood, it shouldn't be that much, number one. I know you can't always control it, but it seems to happen a lot in AEW where somebody is just gushing gallons of blood. And if you're going to make it count, then it can't be more blood. And we're going to get to that. Okay, now I said that MJF and Hangman was one of two of the best matches, and I feel like this next match was the best. And honorable mention to Swerve and Ricochet, who I thought did pretty good too. But the best match, in my opinion, on this card was up next. It was the International Championship match. Konosuke Takeshita, the champion, against Kenny Omega. It was a great match. They went back and forth with forearms and clotheslines and suplexes, and my only complaint is, again, they did the AEW thing where they're outside too long, and the referee is somehow only on one or two after like 3 minutes. But they did a lot of good stuff here. There was I just think these guys complement each other well. They both look good. They both look like stars. They're big. They're fit. That's another problem in some circles in AEW. Kenny Omega looks like he's back. He feels like the important Kenny Omega again. I am going to complain again about that theme music. I don't like it. Go back to Battle Cry, please. He teased us once with it on a Dynamite when he did a run-in. I wish they would go back to it. That's my opinion. But yeah, there was a lot of like big spots in this, like Omega. Takeshita hit Omega with a released German on the floor, and he actually at one point put a table on its side and dropped Omega's stomach first on the side of the table. That looked really dangerous to me, but they're selling the fact of, Kenny Omega with the diverticulitis surgery and all that stuff. But, these guys went back and forth, like I said. I'm not going to do it justice. I'm not going to go blow for blow. The crowd was super into it. this is awesome, Kenny chants, everything. And eventually, Kenny Omega ended up with a crucifix roll-up. So after all the stuff, you would have thought a one-winged angel or whatever, and it was just a roll-up, which normally I would kind of complain and say, well, they did all these massive moves and it ends in a roll-up. But I will say this, it kind of protects Takeshita. It was almost like, oops, he got surprised. And I agree with that ending. If Kenny had to win, I agree in somewhat protecting Takeshita, because I think Takeshita's got a really bright future. I'm sure I'm not alone there. And I failed to mention, too, that Don Callis every now and then was interfering and getting in shots at Kenny, too. And so, but anyway, Kenny Omega is the new international champion. That should bring a lot of prestige to that title belt, and I'm curious to see where they go. I like Omega. I'm glad he's back. It looks like he's fine wrestling-wise. And AEW desperately needs the star power, so that's good. Okay, now we had the steel cage match, and this is where you're going to hear me talk about blood again. Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher. So again, two guys that can really wrestle and work a great match. I think they had a really good match the last time at the last pay-per-view. However, I get it. Okay, it's a grudge match. We're going in the cage. Okay, whatever. Again, I'm not going to cover this in detail. I'm just going to say this. There was a huge spot with the Spanish fly that Ospreay did to Fletcher off the top of the cage, and they did a lot of cool stuff. And when they were wrestling, it was good. Here's where you lose me. You're both gushing blood now, which again, so what does it mean when two women gushed blood everywhere and now two men gush blood? If it's just blood, then who cares? And here's where you really lost me, okay? And with two guys I like, and then I wanted to see this match, but what is it with drinking blood and licking blood and tasting other people's blood in AEW? I mean, it's not. Who's it for? I know the answer from the AEW hardcore, and a guy I like, Brody King, once famously said, "For the sickos, bitch." Well, guess what? If you do this stuff, that's all you're going to get is the sickos. You're not going to grow your audience. And again, when I said I was uncomfortable with how much blood Tony Storm was losing, maybe not on purpose, okay, fine. But this stuff was on purpose. Like what I'm about to talk about. I have no interest, and again, maybe if you're a quote-unquote sicko, and I guess that's supposed to be cool, maybe then you like the sight of a man licking another man's blood off of the steel fence, the steel cage, okay, like Fletcher did. Or Fletcher licking Ospreay's blood off of a screwdriver that he used on him. Or, I'm sorry, I had that backwards, Fletcher, Ospreay's blood. Or how about Fletcher kicking Ospreay in the face and head, definitely making contact because the blood's on his boots, which, by the way, the announcers made a point to say, those are the blood-stained boots from last time. Well, that's great. So that makes it even less sanitary when Fletcher wipes the blood with his hand off of the boot and licks his hand. At this point, I'm just so freaking grossed out that I don't really care about the match. I just want it to end because it's gross. And no, I'm not some little, pathetic snowflake who can never see blood, whatever. Give me a break. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I watched ECW. I saw, I like Mick Foley. I've seen this stuff, and when it means something, and it's once in a great while, and it's a big grudge, that's fine. It's just too much, and I'm just so desensitized to it. And then when you start licking each other's blood and licking it off of objects, and now you've lost me. Now it's just effing disgusting, and I don't care. And that, unfortunately, they soured me on the match, and I didn't pay as much attention as I should have going forward because it's just gross. But anyway, Ospreay won after that big Spanish fly I had mentioned, and then gave the Tiger Driver 91 to emphasize how much he wanted to beat Fletcher because it was a move he had kind of sworn off. All right, so then we had the AEW World Championship match, and I would have bet there would be blood in this one, and I would have lost the bet because there wasn't. The whole thing here was JR came back again for this match, so glad to see that again. The whole storyline here was Edge took out all of the Death Riders one by one, and it was just stupid because his way of taking out Yuta was shaking his hand in a dramatic fashion on Dynamite, saying that's what respect looks like, kid. So we were supposed to believe that suddenly Yuta now is done with Moxley, which it was so obvious he wasn't going to be. I don't know why he didn't just concerto him too. He would have actually literally got rid of him. I want to say before I get into the match, Cope had a great moment with the crowd once again. They did the whole thing where they sang the whole verse of his song, and you could tell that really got to him, and it was pretty cool. I think that's where the real good stuff ended, because I just didn't like this match. I don't think these guys have good chemistry. No offense meant at either guy, but I just didn't like it. I thought it went too long. I didn't think it was particularly exciting. Wheeler Yuta came in at one point and surprise, got into the ring and he hit Cope with the knee, but they teased like, oh, is he going to hit Moxley or Cope? I mean, everybody knew it was going to be Cope. Okay, so Switchblade ended up running down to run interference. He went to go hit Moxley with a briefcase, but he accidentally hit Cope, so they're kind of doing that whole some doubts in this. And at this time and point, I'm just like, whatever. This is like all their matches so far. I don't care. But what breathed a little life into this whole thing and really woke up the crowd, because the crowd was, I think, maybe less into this match than any other one, honestly, was Christian Cage. Looked like he was going to cash in, for lack of a better term. He's got that contract similar to Money in the Bank, and he did. So he, Cope had Moxley pinned. Somebody pulled out the referee in a black hoodie. It's Christian. He cashes in, or whatever you want to call it, signs the contract. Jumps in. It's going to be a triple threat now. He spears Copeland. 2 count. Moxley gets in, gets Christian in the choke. Christian's trying to fight off the choke. He ends up, he puts his arm over Copeland and has him in the pin. 1-2. Nope. Moxley drags him off. And just in these boring Moxley-type fashion matches, the finish is just eventually Christian just fades away and gets defeated. So Christian, who was new and fresh and had the element of surprise, gets choked out and looks like shit by Moxley, and that's it. Moxley's still the champion. And you could just feel the crowd deflate, because I think at this point they would have taken Copeland, and they definitely would have taken Christian, because that got a big pop when he came out. So then there was a little afterbirth where the aftermath, I should say. I've been listening to too much Cornette, I guess. Swerve jumped off of. Well, let me back up. Mox was heading out, through the back entrance like he usually does. Nana came out to meet him, talked a little trash, and then Swerve, lo and behold, was above them in the crowd and jumped down onto Moxley with kind of that stomp thing he does and took out Mox. And we went off the air with the thought of Swerve coming for Moxley's belt. If there is a God, please have Swerve take that title off Moxley, because this is by far, to me, the worst main event angle of the entire year, by far, the Death Rider angle. I don't like it. It's boring. It's not good. The matches haven't been good. I just don't know what's the redeeming quality of this whole thing. It's just not good. That's my opinion. So, Revolution as a whole, I'm here to give my opinion. I thought there was some good wrestling. The woman, I wish we didn't have to do all the blood and stunts, or else I probably would have gave them a higher mark. I will say MJF Hangman, Takeshita, and Omega, 2 best matches. I would probably put Takeshita Omega a little above by a little bit. An honorable mention, Swerve and Ricochet. So I thought we had 3 really good matches, and the rest were just okay. I mean, the Outrunners, Hurt Syndicate was pretty one-sided for the most part, and I already voiced my opinion on the blood, and it's just too much. It's just too much. I am just done with it. But anyway, that was my opinion. So I guess I would give it a good. I think there was 3 really good, solid wrestling matches. The rest was just okay. I thought the main event was just bad. I think Moxley's been involved in some of the worst main events of pay-per-views, honestly. So I guess I would just say okay is my opinion of this pay-per-view, because there was 3 really good things, and then there was other stuff I didn't really care for. And the main event I really didn't care for. So I'm going to say okay. Those 3, if nothing else, you want to watch those 3 matches, I'd recommend them, especially Takeshita Omega. But that's my opinion on Revolution. I am a little more interested now with Swerve. I hope Swerve gets the belt. I don't know if they're going to do that. But that's my opinion. So if you've listened this long, I thank you. Please hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And please keep up with us, especially if you subscribe. You'll know when I upload new content. And I will definitely be uploading content soon. At the very least, I will cover wrestling every week. And if there's a pay-per-view, I will usually not do the weekly shows like I did not do this time with AEW. But if there's not, then I will usually do a general recap of the week in the company for WWE and AEW at least. Okay, so again, thank you if you've listened this far and for joining me. And if you can give me that like and a subscribe and share with your friends, I would truly appreciate it. And everybody take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.